Thursday, everybody. Welcome back to Live Weather Impact here on WCNC Plus. I am meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees. If you missed the show yesterday, the one, the only chief meteorologist Brad Panovich is not here. He is on vacation with his family, well deserved. So we're going to talk about the forecast. Today's been a day. Sweet weather intern Lily's story with all of her clips from all her amazing practice got deleted. Our radar went down, so it's been a fun day, you guys. But we're back in action, and I'm so excited to talk to you about the forecast today. Now, if you remember from last night, we were talking about the heat and humidity returning to the Charlotte area, and that's going to be the big story over the next few days. Now, I said this on Facebook. I'm calling it the Frizzy Hair Chronicles, because it's so hot and humid the next few days. So essentially every single time, if you guys follow me on social media, and I post those little videos that Brad posts, where he gives a weather update, I've been trying to do it whenever I fill in for him, you literally will see my hair grow like 3 sizes, kind of like the Grinch's heart by the time I'm getting to my car. So if you are someone who doesn't like the humidity, like myself, buckle up and let's get ready for the next few days. Heat index values starting tomorrow are going to be at or above 103 degrees. Now that is normally the threshold for higher risk of heat-related illnesses, such as heat exhaustion and heat cramps. The reason why I'm saying this is I want to remind people that when we're honing in on the heat and humidity, we're not honing in on the heat and humidity for your classic heat and humidity this time of year, right? Your normal summer pattern. When we're talking about it, it means that it is above average, worse than normal. And so that's starting tomorrow, especially during the hottest time of the day, which is normally about 1 to 5 this time of year. Remember, it can be earlier during fall and into winter, of course, because the sun sets earlier. But at this time of year, when the sunset is close to 9 o'clock, you normally can get the high temperature even as late as 5. So 1 to 5, highest heat, highest humidity. In fact, actually, we're still at 99 at 5 and 6. So technically, the highest heat index today was 5 and 6 o'clock, just to give you some perspective there. Best way to stay weather aware: follow us, WCNC.com, WCNC Plus, WCNC Charlotte mobile app. Our team of meteorologists will continue to update things on all of those platforms. I will also remind people, if you missed my crazy rant that our sweet digital team decided to post online, I know you guys know what I'm talking about weather apps last week, is that nobody looks at those. It's just raw data, so that is not an accurate place to find heat, humidity, or storm potential. So here's right now the heat impacts for Friday. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday we're in the major. This is essentially a threshold based on how much the heat and humidity could impact you. We're in the major category next 3 days. Good news is we start to trend down on Monday. And we did previously have Monday in that weather alert criteria. I'm still going to keep it here for now. I want to see how tomorrow plays out. Sometimes we'll see things go crazy. Sometimes things will be a little bit lower than expected. So part of forecasting is recognizing trends and patterns. So I do want to see how tomorrow plays out before taking Monday off or keeping it on. Where you can expect your highest heat index tomorrow, right around 104 and 105. If we get to 105, that is the threshold for a heat advisory. I would not be surprised if we saw maybe 1 or 2 pop up locally for tomorrow, and if we don't tomorrow, likely by the weekend. So if you have the WCNC Charlotte mobile app and you want updates to come to your device, make sure that you have the location settings turned on and the weather alerts turned on, because you'll get those right to your phone. A wide view of satellite and radar showing really not much activity right now. We had a few little isolated storms, one in Cabarrus County there near Harrisburg, one up toward Rockwell, just eastern side there of Rowan County. We did have one storm that was really, really aggressive. A lot of heavy rain, a lot of lightning in eastern Alexander and western Iredell County. That has since cleared up. And we have some light rain as well for the mountains and foothills. Ashe and Watauga counties are still technically under a flood watch through tonight. I think that was just due to some aggressively heavy rain they had earlier, plus the ground is pretty saturated, but not expecting too much craziness here over the next few hours. Through tonight, most of the rain does look to wrap up just after sunset. Tomorrow morning, same song and dance. It's dry, but the heat and humidity is going to crank up pretty quickly. Our overnight lows tonight will probably only drop to around 76 or 77. So remember, it's not just the low being hot and humid and really sticky. It also means we're starting at a higher threshold, right? So if you had the same exact setup today, and let's say that the low started at 73 versus tomorrow at 77, we're already starting 4 degrees warmer. So we will still see some isolated storms, but I think the bigger story, again, for tomorrow especially, is going to be the heat and humidity. So here's that 7-day forecast. Next 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Unfortunately, also the next 3 times that the Charlotte Knights are going to be playing at home. So if you are heading to a Knights game, you're trying to get out and enjoy your weekend, just please make sure you're taking all of those extra precautions. We will see heat and humidity trend down a little bit Monday and then go right back up by the end of next week. So other than the heat and humidity, not a lot of craziness going on over the next few days, but I know a lot of people oftentimes do have questions about the heat and humidity, kind of how the heat index works. And I'm wondering if, Jeb, we can pull up that Weather IQ on heat index just to talk a little bit more about the calculations and how that works.
How's your day going? It's not the heat, it's the humidity, is a phrase you've probably heard during the summer dozens of times in the South. But it's actually both. Heat index refers to what the temperature feels like to the human body when relative humidity is combined with air temperature. When our bodies get too hot, they sweat to cool themselves off. If the sweat can't evaporate because there's too much moisture and humidity already present, our bodies can't regulate temperature properly. This is why we call heat index the feels like temperature during the summer, because we feel hotter in humid conditions. The heat index is calculated based on this formula, or you can use one of these charts based on the temperature and the dew point. Just remember, these charts are based on temperatures in the shade, so if you're going to be in the direct sunlight, you have to add about 10 to 15 degrees. Let's look at a few examples. If it's 100 degrees and the dew point is 60, it'll feel around 101. Swap out a tropical dew point of 75 degrees, now it feels near 114. Prolonged exposure to elevated heat index values can lead to a variety of heat disorders. So when is it considered dangerous? A heat index at or above 103 degrees can lead to heat exhaustion or heat cramps. The worst case scenario, heat stroke, which is a medical emergency, occurs with a heat index 125 degrees or higher. Raising your weather IQ and hopefully not the heat, I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees.
Who was that girl? Just kidding. Sorry, guys. This is my humor. I lost my train of thought. Yes. So I know that was a lot of information. Essentially, think more humidity, your body can sweat less. That's why it feels hotter and more humid. Similar to during the winter time where you have a wind chill, because it's the way that the wind is moving across your body that allows for the wind to make it feel colder, because essentially you release heat as the wind strokes nicely across your arm, and then that's what makes it feel colder. So thankfully we don't deal with a ton of crazy wind chill in this area, but of course we deal with a lot of heat and humidity. So I guess you can kind of take the good with the bad. I think that we have Tim Buckley coming up here very shortly, but we're going to eventually bring him on, our WFMY chief meteorologist there. I do want folks to make sure that they're, again, staying weather aware, keeping a very close eye on the forecast the next few days. And I think it's a good reminder, too, while I don't think we'll have as crazy heat and humidity we had a few weeks ago where we had a 100-degree temperature and a heat index of 110, don't forget to check on your friends and family, right? Neighbors, young children. I mentioned this, I think, a few weeks ago in the stream with Nick, but part of education, and one of the things that I talk to when I go to school talks, and I know Brad does the same thing, is that we're also trying to make sure kids are aware of like ways to stay safe. Because think about it, if you're I have a nephew who's almost 4, and obviously he's probably not old enough really right now to really understand, but let's say that he's, 7, and I've talked about it so much with him, like maybe when they're going outside to play, he and his friends are now aware, of how heat and humidity can impact them. So I think it's sometimes on us as the adults in the equation to make sure that the kids are staying aware of the forecast. Of course, if you have children yourself, hopefully you agree with that, and then the elderly too, because they obviously can't handle heat and humidity nearly as much. And if you have any kind of cardiovascular health problems as well as respiratory illnesses, you also are more susceptible to the heat and humidity. So that's another factor as well. Do we have Tim? Okay. Interesting. Well, Greensboro area has definitely seen more storms today. So I did tell Tim that if he needed to take a little extra time, even on our stream, he could definitely talk about that. I do think that Oh, Jeb, you actually missed it yesterday. It was really funny. So Tim has a new weather nook, and like his camera, if you go like this, it zooms out and it zooms back in automatically, and he did it, and it freaked all of us out. It was really funny.
Well, let's go to the weather nook right now with Tim
there
Buckley.
he is. Hey, Tim.
Here I am. Hello, live from the Weather Nuke in Greensboro. Yeah, good to be with you. How's it going?
It's going. I know that you were, like me, dealing with some radar outages earlier, so that's kind of been the, whatever the opposite of a highlight is, that's been that part of my day, so.
Yeah, technical support. It's not just for your job at home. It's for our job here and everybody else as well. But it's been maybe a little busier here today compared to the Charlotte area. What else is new? I guess we've kind of been the hot spot the last couple of days in the Piedmont and in the Triangle and the Triad. But, here's the good thing, though, Brittany. Like, no reports of flooding today. We did have a warning that was out. It's actually still in effect. But it doesn't seem like that's coming to fruition for any flash flooding. The main difference I noticed, and I kind of walked outside this morning, and it was just a little change, but to me it seemed like the first day where there was a bit of a breeze to the air in a while. It's been pretty still and just kind of suffocating, but we've had a bit of a breeze, and these thunderstorms today, they're kind of chugging along at about 20 miles per hour, which is not that fast, but it's a lot better than where we'd been, and so those flooding issues don't seem to be as bad, or not really materializing. We did have a couple trees down in parts of the area, but overall, a normal storm day. This is kind of more usual to what we see for summer rather than the big bad stuff that's been happening basically every day for the last couple of weeks.
Well, we had a few storms too, but can you give us some of that breeze? Because I didn't feel any of that today, Tim. So I think that your storms maybe helped out a little bit more, but for me, the air was stagnant. I know you saw my social media post where I said the frizzy hair chronicles, because I think we talked about that. But yes, it's just like gotten worse and worse every single day.
Yeah, I don't have that same problem, but I do empathize. I know it's not a fun time of year for comfort or for hair. I'm quite sick of the humidity, to be honest with you.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is whenever I complain, especially this time of year, about my hair, because I have naturally curly hair, Brad just looks at me and he goes, "Yeah, me too." And I'm always like, yeah, I'm sure you
Brad
understand.
really doesn't have that problem. Yeah, he hasn't had that for a while, for sure.
So I know one
should we
thing
talk about the humidity? Where do we want to start here?
I was going to say, should we talk about the dew point map that you were showing us earlier? Because you guys had a way crazier
I think it'd be a
dew
good
points.
one.
Yeah, let's pop it up.
So we try and talk about dew points as much as we can in this job and in this business because it's educational. I think it's educational to give you a better way to gauge your comfort. How is your comfort? What are you feeling outside? A dew point map is much more helpful. A dew point temperature is much more helpful to gauge your comfort than relative humidity is. So kind of there are different thresholds. But basically, if the dew point is above 70, it is oppressively humid. It is that Florida humidity, the tropical humidity. We get it in the Carolinas every summer. But right now, and you're smart viewers, so you can understand this as weather geeks here, just like us, what we're looking at is a big graph, but what it's trying to chart, this is starting in June, going through July. Every one of those columns is a different year of record. So this is for my area in Greensboro going back to the 1940s. And what it's doing is it's counting how many hours was that dew point in the sticky territory during the summer months through July 16th, which was yesterday. So for Greensboro this year, we've had 562 hours above 70-degree dew points since June 1st. So that's number one, as long as that data goes back, which is all the way back to 1946. Previously, 2017 had the number one spot. If you look at the top four, they're all since 2005. So, when it comes to climate change, when it comes to talking about, how is our weather changing a little bit? Sometimes humidity is part of that discussion, and we kind of see that borne out in some of the data. But if you think that this year has been more humid than usual, you're right. It has. And in our case, it's been in that record level. I think for Charlotte, we were looking at it earlier. It's way above average, but it's not quite a record for you guys.
Yeah, Charlotte's looked like, I believe it was in the top 5. Jeb's going to put it up. Yeah, number 4. And I think this is a really good example, like you said, Tim, because we talk so much about moisture, and the air holding more moisture means heavier rain events, climate change related. And I think you have to remind people that goes back to the humidity feel as well. I also think it's important to note too, and I know we talk about this a lot, but humidity can also allow for us to feel hotter because of the increased dew point, but it can also allow for the temperatures to not be as aggressive, because as you know, way more energy to warm the air when it's humid outside versus dry. So in a dry spell, you're actually more likely to see a temperature, for example, of 100, but maybe it actually feels like 100, versus when you have muggy air and a lot of humidity, there's so much more energy that it takes to get that warm, but it might only be 95, but maybe the heat index is 105. So that's something else too, because at least in Charlotte, we've hit 104, I think 3 or 4 times in history. And so we'll get questions about people asking, well, why don't we hit 100 or why don't we hit 99 as often? But it feels worse. And the answer is humidity.
Yeah. It's true. And that's such a great point. And, sometimes we'll bring up the fun little stat of like, well, did you know Miami, Florida has never hit 100 degrees? Well, this is part of why. They get that humidity, and it makes it a lot harder to heat up in the big way. Here in Greensboro, we haven't hit 100 officially at the airport. We've done it on the car all the time. The car thermometer is always 100. But we haven't hit 100 at the airport in PTI since 2012. So we're actually going on about 13 years now without triple-digit heat in the city, which is kind of amazing to think about, but that doesn't mean it hasn't been hot. We've had some hot summers, but we're much more commonly in those low to mid-90s with high humidity than anything else. And this year is an example of that. And unfortunately, in the forecast, there's not a ton of relief. We're probably going to stay in that oppressive range through the weekend and into early next week. Maybe a slight dew point dip. I don't know if you were looking at the extended models at all, Brittany, but I noticed the Euro and the GFS are disagreeing a little around Wednesday that we might have a break in the humidity, but I'm not biting on that just yet. I don't want false hope until we have a bit of a sure thing with that.
Yeah, plus honestly, upper 60s this time of year, is it that much of a difference? I did want to show, or at least bring this up. June 25th, we did hit 100 degrees here in Charlotte. We hit it one day last year, it was July 5th. But before that, it hadn't been since 2015. But in 2015, we hit it 7 times.
Wow.
So it doesn't happen a lot, but since 2000, it's only happened about 24 times. So that's 24 times in 25 years. So it's not common, but it does happen.
Mm-hmm. But you're highlighting heat threats going into this weekend, and it'll be hotter in the Charlotte area than up here. But the triple-digit heat index, that's something that's, it's been, so common almost every day, and probably only going to get worse those next couple afternoons.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the reasons why we get, as you know, so many comments when we talk about heat index of people saying, it's hot and humid every day of the year, or every day of the summer here in the Carolinas. But we always talk about the fact that we're not highlighting it like we are unless it's potentially dangerous or you get that weather alert kind of threshold there.
Sure, and it's a real thing because your body can't cool down when it's humid. It's a different thing. The whole reason that you cool down in the first place is because we sweat and get gross and all that stuff, but that water evaporates off your skin, and then it takes that heat energy away from your body. It doesn't evaporate that much when it's humid. So it's kind of like clogging a vent on a car or something. You can overheat, and you don't want to do that. So the heat index is real. It's not fake, and it is something that you should take seriously.
I also think it's good to note, too, that when you're in the direct sun, it can eventually feel so much hotter. So a heat index of 103, for example, after an hour in the hot sun, it can feel close to 108, and then it just kind of goes up from there. And speaking of, when you're outside in the direct sunlight, you got sports, I don't know, the kids have soccer practice, whatever it is, you're going out and about trying to enjoy your day. Remember that whether you're playing or enjoying sports, things can get a little bit tweaky here and there when it comes to the heat index. So for that, and since the Knights are back at home tomorrow here in Charlotte, we're going to go to a very special weather IQ from Chris Mulcahy.
From the beginning to end of baseball season, weather drastically affects how a baseball moves through the air. So let's raise that weather IQ. Let's play ball. When it's cold and dry out, this is great pitching weather. Curveballs and sliders will have a better break because the air is more dense. The denser air allows for a little bit more drag in the ball, enhancing the spin. But when the batter does make contact, this cold, dense air won't allow the ball to travel as far. Ooh, only making it to the warning track. Cold air has its molecules packed really close together, which slows any object down. That was a great hit. This is why there's usually more home runs later in the season compared to early on. That's why you're gonna find the coach calling for the outfield to move in. As the season moves on and the weather warms and gets more humid, the advantage moves to the batter. Balls will travel farther, and breaking balls will break less. Warm air is less dense than cold air. The molecules are further apart, so this allows less drag on a baseball's flight. This can add an extra 20 feet onto the flight of the ball, because believe it or not, it's the humid and muggy air that's less dense than the drier air. It's because the water molecule is lighter than the nitrogen and oxygen that it replaces. So when it's hot and humid, it might not be the best when you're sitting in the stands, but the ball travels more freely when it's uncomfortable. Other effects, sky conditions. When it's cloudy, especially if the clouds are white, you can lose the ball in the clouds. And when it's sunny, the sun can get in your eyes, creating unnecessary errors. Lastly, winds. Winds coming from the first baseline favor right-handed hitters, but from the third baseline favor left-handed hitters. Thanks to the Charlotte Knights here at Truist Field, I'm meteorologist Chris Mulcahy.
Gotta love that guy.
He really laid it all out there.
I know.
I want him on my team. He's given 110%. Yeah, that's good.
He always is. He always is. And I think it's just important to note, you saw him kind of joking around with, his number one in the stands. But when you're in the direct sun like that, you're sitting there for so long. And you kind of almost forget whether you're drinking water or something else.
Mm-hmm. It's true. I think probably one of the hottest times I've ever had in my life was at a baseball stadium. Football stadiums too, but like baseball, you're in the middle of the summer. I remember being a kid, going to a game at Yankee Stadium with my dad and my grandpa, and I had one of those like dark navy shirts on, and we're in the upper deck, and you're just sitting there for like 3 hours. There's no relief. So you've really got to hydrate a lot more. And it's expensive to hydrate at a ballpark, so you've got to be ready to do that.
Yeah, I think it also depends on where you live, because I was a cheerleader and a dancer in high school, and in Florida, it stays just as hot and humid as it is now, well into August, September, sometimes early October. So we'd be out there on the field, ready to go, just getting battered with the heat and just battered in sweat. And so I also feel, and I don't know if there's any scientific reason behind this, but I feel like I could handle it a lot easier when I was like 15 versus 32. So I'm sure that plays a factor as well.
There's something about kids, you don't get hot and you don't get cold, or if you do, you don't complain about. I don't know. I can't figure that out, but kids are resilient. But they should still be drinking the water just like us, for sure.
Yeah, they definitely should. Someone else, too, who can't advocate for themselves are our pets. We talk about it all the time when it comes to dogs, especially walking the dog, how you should flip, your hand 7 seconds. If it's too hot for you, it's too hot for them. But I feel like when we get these stretches of heat, I'm sure Greensboro, too, here in Charlotte, we talk about it a lot, but sometimes maybe not enough, because we're always getting viewer comments about, talk about the pets, talk about the pets. So we are going to bring up a story here about pets and heat here in just a second. We'll be right back, though. Tim and I will be back on the other side of the story.
Well, a responsible pet parent knows if it's too hot for us out here, it's probably too hot for our pets. But before you call police on a pooch panting on your neighbor's porch, let's verify.
Is it illegal to leave a pet outside in extreme heat in North Carolina? Our sources are North Carolina General Statute 14360, North Carolina Senate Bill 573, Guilford County Code, and Charlotte Ordinance 371. The answer needs context. The current North Carolina law's animal cruelty clause doesn't explicitly discuss heat or shelter. It says any person who deprives an animal of necessary sustenance can be guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor. Senate Bill 573, proposed this year, specifically requires adequate shelter. The shelter must protect each animal from the elements and not readily conduct heat when the air temperature is greater than 85. The bill passed a first reading in the Senate in March and has a ways to go before becoming law. Most municipalities have their own rules. Guilford County's code requires pets have adequate shelter from the elements, and the tethering ordinance from 2014 makes it illegal to tie up a pet outside without supervision. The City of Charlotte's ordinance doesn't require supervision, but sets tether parameters requiring access to shelter.
Yeah, heat stroke can be very serious in pets. The ASPCA wants you to be mindful of life-threatening symptoms like a seizure or an elevated body temperature of 104. With your Verify, I'm Megan Molaris.
Da, da, da.
Got to be smart with the heat and the pets. Yeah.
It's true. And my dog is bougie, and he does not like to even go outside to go to the bathroom when it is like a degree above 90. So sometimes it's a pick up, walk him to the grass to pee, and then pick up and having to carry him back. So he knows. He knows.
This sounds like a good IQ. I think we need to see this in a package form. Maybe you carrying Roger out to the grass and then carrying him back and keeping him heat smart.
Yeah, he does the same thing with snow. Like the first time we had snow in Charlotte, what was that, back in 2022? It was like a step off the patio, and he looked at me like, You're kidding if you think I'm going to walk on this. But do you have dogs, Tim?
Yeah, they know for sure. I don't have dogs. We do have 2 cats. They're inside. They don't know if it's hot or cold or anything. They don't like thunder, so they know about that. But you mentioned the snow. We did bring Figaro the cat outside once in a snowstorm, and he was just thoroughly disgusted by it. So it doesn't find the snow appeal like many of us do. But yes, he wouldn't like the heat either because he has a big black and white coat of fur, and it's just too hot for them, right?
Yeah. I actually think you brought up an important thing. I mean, cats, like you said yours are indoor cats. A lot of people have outdoor cats. You know, a lot of stables, people have farms and things like that, maybe have the barn cats that kind of go in and out. You have other animals that hang out outside. It is a good reminder that if you have animals that you own that do spend time outdoors, we also have to keep those folks in mind as well. Well, we'll be back tomorrow for another edition here of Live Weather Impact. Tim, great to see you as always, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening. Stay safe, everyone.
Take care.